Welcome back to another video, and today we'll be discussing eyeshadow palettes that I almost bought. Welcome back, and today we are doing actually a video format that I actually like to watch other creators do, and I decided that because I do actually like discussing eyeshadow palettes because those are, I think, ultimately my favorite makeup products, I thought it would be fun to give my own spin about this. So as you have seen from the title, today we are discussing, I think, altogether 8 eyeshadow palettes that almost made it into my collection, meaning I almost bought them, but something kinda then, I don't know, in the end made it that I didn't buy them. And as a disclaimer, it could still be that some of these could still eventually like make it into my collection, but how should I say, there are also some couple of older palettes that I'm not unsure that are how easily they would be available anymore, but definitely I think, and these are always quite an interesting discussion to have, because there's so, especially eyeshadow palettes have been quite of an, I think, sweetheart of makeup industry for the last, like, I think ever since 2016-17, when like makeup YouTube and makeup influencers really started like sort of exploding and getting more views altogether. But I do think we have now actually seen a trend where eyeshadow palettes aren't as trendy. You can definitely see it based on that, for example, mainstream brands, for example, I don't think they're releasing as many palettes like maybe a year or two ago, and I think a lot of especially younger makeup consumers are doing more of these one and done eyeshadow looks, or they're just like forgoing eyeshadow altogether in their makeup routines. And I think what has replaced eyeshadow palettes have been definitely like cheap products. We have seen now, like for example, blush has been very trendy now. I think we're already now on the second year of like blush being a very trendy makeup product. But that was the sort of introduction to this video, so now let's actually go and discuss the 8 palettes that I wanted to sort of bring up into this video, and a bit of reasoning why in the end it came that I actually didn't end up getting the palettes. So I'm gonna dig my phone now because I have the palette images there, and you will be seeing the image of the palette that we are discussing like somewhere around here. So first one, this is a palette that tends to seem to be, I seem to refer to this a lot always when I talk about this particular brand. So we are talking about Natasha Denona Yucca palette. And this came out a couple of years ago, and this was the first palette that had the sort of revamped Natasha Denona formula, meaning this had the upgraded shimmer formula. If you have watched in my review playlist, there is now the collective eyeshadow palette review, where I actually reviewed the I Need a Nude palette, and that's actually the first Natasha Denona palette that I have tried that has the upgraded formula. I have some of her older palettes, but that's the first one. But this was actually like the first one that altogether had the upgraded formula. Except, I'm now thinking that was it so that there might have been a mini that had the upgraded. Yeah, don't quote me on that. There could have been one maybe mini-sized palette in between that had maybe one shade in the upgraded shimmer formula, but this is the first like bigger palette. And this palette had everything go for it that I would buy. This was released a couple of summers ago, where earthy green tones were quite trendy. Not my primary like color way to go, but in terms of greens, I have always discussed that altogether primary colorful shades aren't my first shade, like colorful shades altogether. I either like them to be pastel or somehow a bit like maybe muted down would be the correct word, but these sort of very like punchy primary tones, like having especially a palette full of them, isn't my jam. But this was actually pretty good because it had the sort of muted greens, it even had a bit of golds, and I was like thinking that is this going to be like Natasha Denona's gold palette, which was one of the original big palettes that cost like I think over 100 euros, was this like meant to be a sort of replacement for that. Well, we now have the golden palette actually, which was released this year, which is supposed to like replace the original gold palette, but that's actually much more boring than the original gold palette. But anyway, back to the Yucca palette. This had everything going for it. I was actually traveling last summer when this was released. I was traveling to Berlin, and Berlin has a Sephora. It's inside a department store chain. If you live in Germany, you know this, that Germany doesn't have independent Sephora stores. They are located inside, I think, a department store chain in the country. And this palette was already like, I checked online, and actually when I went to the like Sephora stand or area there, the palette was there. And last summer there was a situation that I was actually changing jobs, so my old workplace had to pay some like extra payments to me because I was like leaving the job, so it was related to like paid holidays that had sort of gathered up, and because I wasn't able to hold all the holidays before my contract ended to my previous workplace, they had to pay those out for me. So I actually also had quite a lot of money to that particular Berlin trip. So this was in the shopping list, and trust me, the amount of that I spent on makeup on the Berlin trip last year, that was like ridiculous. I'm still a bit ashamed actually how much I spent, but this was on the shopping list. And then something, for some reason, when I was like, I looked at the palette, they had it in the store, I was looking at it and thinking that yeah, it is there and it looks kinda, and for some reason I didn't end up getting it. So the only eyeshadow product that I ended up getting was a Charlotte Tilbury quad, which I'm not sure in terms of value for money, because the quad is not as expensive as this one, but they are pretty close, because the quads go around 50 euros depending on the retailer, and the midi palettes last year, I was thinking that was the price already hiked to 69 euros, or was it like 65 still last year? I'm not sure, but in terms of value for money, this would have been like much better. There would have been more shades, and I think generally this would have been more exciting, because I think I got the Charlotte Tilbury quad that I ended up getting in place of like this big midi-sized palette was like, it was I think the Pillow Talk. It wasn't the original Pillow Talk, but the one that has a bit deeper version of the original Pillow Talk quad. So in terms of diversity also, this would have like made much more sense. Is this a palette that if I would magically have the opportunity to get this? Well, obviously, like considering that when I discussed it in the eyeshadow palette review video where I reviewed the I Need a Nude palette, I actually got that as a gift when my parents were traveling abroad. They were Spain this summer during July, and they were kind of like saying that, hey, that if you want us to bring something like there's a Sephora, then I was like that, well, maybe bring the I Need a Nude. So I actually picked the I Need a Nude because I actually checked the stock of the Sephora that I knew that was close by to the place they were staying in Spain, and they had both palettes in stock in store. So I could have like asked them to bring this instead of the I Need a Nude, and I still ended up going with the I Need a Nude. So I think at this point we can just say that this Yuka palette and me, it's just not happening. I think generally, even though I have been making maybe a bit even complaints about the fact that it's been quite neutral heavy year altogether when you looked at the eyeshadow, but also I do kind of think that I've been maybe a bit, not completely leaning into neutrals, but I have had my moment with neutral palettes this year, even though I haven't been happy with all of the ones that I've tried. But yeah, I think that at this point Natasha Denona and Yuka palette not happening, but I can still like appreciate this. I do think from Natasha Denona, considering the slew of neutral and rosy pinkish palettes that we have now seen that have been released after this, except for the Xenon palette that was like all of blacks and greys. This I think has the most unique color story in terms of the newer formula that she has brought palettes to the market, and I have seen a sneak peek of apparently a warmer neutral palette version that is supposed to come from Natasha Denona at the end of August. It is another midi-sized palette, so it seems also that Natasha Denona is very much just now seems to be sticking currently just with neutral palettes, which is kind of a shame, because this kind of like this color story clearly shows that she can still do this very cool, bit more unique color stories, but it seems that after this Yuka we haven't really seen those, and apparently we won't be seeing them for a long time. But yeah, that was the first of the palettes. Then a bit of a newer palette, so this is the Sigma Cool Neutrals palette. And this was originally a palette that we saw when Sigma invited influencers into a sort of, or they sponsored an influencer trip, and this was sort of presented to them there, and there was quite a bit of a gap when we first saw this and when it was actually released. This has been on the market for some time, and with me, Sigma Corda Rosa is still one of my favorite, I think, palettes altogether that I have ever tried. Unfortunately, I had to declutter that one because some of the shades were just, I had my eyes tearing up, which is a bit strange because usually like red and pink eyeshadows, I don't, for example, have a carmine sensitivity, because there are other reds and pinks that I have been able to use with the same pigment, but there was something in the Sigma formula. And because unfortunately, while I love the Corda Rosa and I did actually like Sigma's formula, I have been a bit reluctant. I haven't actually bought Sigma palette after I decluttered the Corda Rosa. That was like a long time ago already. That was, I think, during somewhere around pandemic or after pandemic. What has, I think, made this particularly attractive for me is definitely that I know that some people have been that way, that this isn't completely a cool tone palette, and I do agree. There is, I think, a cool toned half, and then there's a bit warmer half in this one. But I actually do think that because this has the warmer half, there's actually like it is what makes this kind of unique. I would also say that I do like the mustardy like matte shades. I am not a fan of yellow golds, which I think this has. I'm looking at the picture. I think there's at least one and maybe actually two. The photo isn't exactly the like most. It's a basic stock photo of the palette, so it's not in a sort of like a lighting conditions that. But I think this at least would have like what I would categorize as two like old gold shimmers, and those are not my favorite shimmers. But the rest of the shades are very much like, there are some mustardy, some neutral mattes, then you have this sort of almost like bit of purple in this one, and then you have bit of like taupish neutral leaning browns in the other side. So color story wise this would be very something interesting that I'm still interested to get, but best place for me to get Sigma is Beauty Bay. This is actually something that has been available on the website, and there's been definitely, especially since Beauty Bay does run offers quite often, there's been definitely like a couple of evenings that I've been scrolling the Beauty Bay's website and thinking that, well, maybe I should get it. I could get maybe some other products that I want to shop from Beauty Bay on the same go, but for now this has just been something that's been in the consideration level, but never made it into my cart or to being bought. But could this be the Sigma palette that I try after many years of not trying the formula? We shall see. As I said, I am kind of maybe more leaning into neutrals, but I do want there to be something interesting with neutral palettes, because at this point, like, we have seen so many by now if you have been on the makeup sort of YouTube and community for a long time. But yeah, I'd say this could be one of those palettes that eventually might make it into my collection, but for now it is not like a priority, because there's been actually there's a lot of stuff that I think that is coming that I will rather put my money on. Okay, then something that I think is pretty, how should I say, typical for this brand, and this shouldn't really like make me, like I should just say that no, you have this all in your collection, but still. So this is the NARS palette, and now I'm gonna actually see the name of it, because this had a longer name, and I actually don't remember it by heart. What was it? I had the names listed in a sheet. Yeah, so this was the Afterglow Irresistible Eyeshadow Palette from NARS, and as you can see from this is NARS has done this like a million times over. Like, this is like, if Charlotte Tilbury was the one that we have now said for many years that they just do pinks, I think NARS has been the one that has been doing the pink neutrals for like even longer than Charlotte Tilbury has. And I was like, NARS isn't the brand that's too easily accessible to me. However, it is one of those brands that I do like to, for example, look into when I'm traveling abroad and there is a retailer, like a department store or even a Sephora that sells, because I do think that NARS generally, they seem to have still a pretty good like quality in terms of their products, but they're still a very, how should I say, a typical higher-end brand that they certainly like don't do anything outside of the like box that we usually see higher-end brands doing in terms of color stories or products that they do. Something also that I was like quite close actually thinking that this could be like that, because I have still like thought that I would like to try one NARS palette just to see how the formula compares to other high-end formulas. But what actually has like held back me from ordering this is that this is actually much more like sort of orangey reddish leaning rather than this sort of like cool toned pink leaning. Like, I'd say, for example, compared to maybe like Charlotte Tilbury's Pillow Talk sort of products that have, so those are like very like, I'd say, on the pink, even some of them even may go to the more of like cool tone side of things. But this actually, when I started seeing reviews of this one, this is actually like this sort of brick orangey reddish leaning in terms of quite many of the shades, and that's what's been maybe like holding back, because that's not the kind of like warm tone kind of shades. Like, I can take a few of those, and I certainly have shades like those in my collection, but it's not the primary sort of these like neutral type of shades that I'm leaning. Apparently the formula of this is supposed to be quite good. Like, all the reviews that I've seen is that this seems to be very easy to apply, nice formula. I think this goes around 60 euros or something, which I think is quite typical for what high-end palettes do, and this does actually have like several shades, so this isn't like a quad or a quint, so I do think that the price matches, and I did kind of like the cover of this. I mean, the packaging is very pretty. So this is definitely something that was quite attractive when I saw the promo photos of it, but then when I started seeing how this actually looks in real lighting, I was thinking that yeah, maybe like this would be, I think, a palette that I would actually have to see in real life. I actually might get an opportunity to see this. I will be traveling during August, I've talked about that a lot, and NARS seems to be one of those higher-end brands that is sold in a department store of the country that I'm traveling to. And based on what I have looked beforehand, this seems to be a product that is stocked, I think, both of the major department store chains. So this, even though this is a limited edition palette, this still seems to be around. So if I can see this like real life and then get to the conclusion that okay, I want to now buy it because I've seen what it looks like in real life, then this could be a maybe. But this again is not something that's like a super priority to me. So I think next from sort of higher end brands we will be moving to indie brands. And first let's go to a palette from a brand that I have spoken really highly of, and I will be getting a palette from soon, but it's not this one. So this is the Night and Shade palette from Gourmand Girls, and now when you will be seeing the picture you're probably gonna say that, didn't you say that purples aren't your primary color tone? And yes, that's correct. I'm currently like on my 2-week rotation trying the huge P. Louise double stacked purple palette that I showed in my sort of P. Louise haul video that I got in one of the mystery boxes. And purple isn't definitely like the primary color. There are like pops of purple that I can deal with, but having an all palette full of purples isn't my primary thing. But I have been like eyeing this on Monolith Shop, which is a European indie brand retailer, and have been like eyeing this for the longest time because there's still something like very attractive. I don't know, is it how they have placed this or is it the pops that this has, but it has the sort of like more, I'd say, it has the two kind of purples that I do tend to like if I use purple. It has the more periwinkle-like purple, which is like almost a pastel, and then there's actually a bit more like, I'd say, red and grape-leaning purples rather than having these like blue, like this sort of darker bluer based purples. There's also, I do like the sort of deeper corner that's in the upper side of the palette, especially the shimmers have been like something that the sort of deeper shimmers that you can see in the palette, those have been also like very tempting me. And I do kind of like the idea of having this sort of green and yellow pops of colors in it, which you wouldn't like necessarily think that would maybe go with this, but those are actually something that they, in some odd way, they make sense to me. This has been something that has been in and out of stock with Monolith Shop. There is a like, I could get this, but I am actually going to be getting the peach themed palette from Gourmand Girl. The palette should arrive in the week that this video will go live, and I will, because I was very impressed with the Gourmand Girl formula, both the matte and shimmer formulas, when I tried the Syria Soto collaboration palette that was like some time ago last year. But I had been like waiting for the brand to come out with just the color story that I would like, and this has been like something that's been close enough. The peach palette came closer and I ended up ordering it. But if I am still thinking after trying the peach palette, that I want to try another palette, this could again end up getting into my collection. But yeah, but as I said, I have been like cautious because again then I have to still make the consideration that yeah, the color combination is pretty cool, but still in the end of the day those are still like purple types of colors. So this is a bit of a like, I'd say, 50-50 situation. Let's next actually discuss two palettes from a same brand. So Lunar Beauty, which is a Manny MUA's brand, it is a brand that's quite easily, like there's a couple of places I can get it from. I can get it from Monolith Shop and then also Bougie Shop, which is a Dutch retailer, and Bougie Shop seems to get the Lunar Beauty launches like a bit faster. There are two palettes from this brand that I have been eyeing, and these have been again like palettes that I've been like eyeing in and out like a few years because both these are I think a bit older. So first, a very OG palette. So this is the Strawberry Moon palette, and this is definitely like in the terms of color story, like even with the two pops of blue, I think this is awesome because this has this sort of beautiful pinkish tones. This would actually, like, when you look at it, would think that yeah, this is like perfect. Like I can take the fact that there's one yellow gold shimmer shade, which are not my primary thing, and two pops of blue, but again I can take it because primarily this is like complete me color story. However, why I didn't end up buying this, this is an older release, so it could be that when this was released, I think I might have still been, is it that long that I was still in university? Well, it could be that for example, my income level wasn't when this was, because Lunar Beauty's palettes, they go around, the prices have gone up a bit, but when the brand started selling, they were around 40 or 50 euros. The palettes are definitely, I have tried one Lunar Beauty palette, it's the one neutral with the Medusa head, and I was very impressed by the quality, so this is a brand that has been in my radar in terms that I would like to try something with it, because I have liked one of the palettes that I have gotten from them previously. I have decluttered that one because it was getting old, but this is a brand that I know that can do quality stuff. But I think with this one it could have been the income situation that I wasn't still on a full pair. I was still doing like part-time jobs along studying, so it just wasn't financially viable for me. Or it could have been that, especially when I was getting into this more like creative makeup, also the fact that this has only an upper row or shimmers, meaning this is a matte heavy palette. These days I can actually, because I do have special shade palettes, these days I'm not as adverse to having a majority matte formula if it's a color story or if there's something special about the palette altogether. But I do say that when I was definitely when I was like getting into collecting makeup products, like more than just like for everyday use, I was quite strict that I did want to keep with 50-50 shimmer and matte ratio. So it could be either an income thing or the fact that there was like only like one row of shimmers in this one. This palette is still available, but I do think that by now the time has been moved on. I do think that the next palette we will be discussing will show it that Mani's own formula has improved, and the formula of, let's just say, other indie brand competition has improved. So I do think that even though I do think that this has been on quite steep discounts on quite a lot of places, it's just that the time has passed for this, and this is not a palette that I would even consider at this point keeping in my maybe list, because it's just that I do think that there's been like a better iteration of this sort of pink palettes with a pop of other color, and even like let's just say improved palettes even in Lunar Beauty's own line. But this is definitely something that for the longest time, like I was like for years thinking that I want to get this at some point, but other things got before it, and now we, of course, as I said, there are like other things even within this brand that I'm more looking into. Okay, so next the palette that this goes to the category, especially considering that I have been doing more neutral eyeshadow, then this is actually something that I could get from Lunar Beauty. So this is the, oh my god, I just realized, the previous palette, it's not called Strawberry Moon, it's Strawberry Dream. I'm very sorry, I should really check this. So the previous palette, not Strawberry Moon, Strawberry Dream, I will fix it in the, you will see a small text box when I will be editing this one. But the next palette, which is kinda could be in the to get list at some point, is Nude Prism palette. And this has, this is the second newest palette, because Lunar Beauty did come out with the sort of mushroom themed palette. I don't remember the name of it. That's also a palette that I was kind of like eyeing for quite a while, but I actually came to the conclusion that I will skip it, because there was just in the end, while it had this sort of a grungy, sort of bit of grungier color story, I came to the conclusion that that's a palette that didn't have it quite together. But the Nude Prism still actually to this day have been a palette again that I have been actually eyeing a lot, and now that I'm more into my neutral eyeshadows, I am have been tempted, because there's been like Lunar Beauty has also new liquid blushes which I've been like eyeing now and thinking that I would like to get. I do think that why this particular neutral palette is attractive to me is that there are pink tones in this one, and there is like the shimmers seem to be like, if you compare the picture of this to the Strawberry Dream palette, is that the shimmers definitely, you can already just see from the promo pictures, they seem to have more oomph to them, meaning that they are much more like shinier, and definitely because this is the second newest palette that Mani has in his like makeup line, there's definitely like, it's no surprise that the formula of this is probably improved. But yeah, as a neutral palette, I do think altogether like how Mani has sort of placed the colors and how the variety of depth that this has is that this actually would be a pretty good neutral palette if you like your sort of like I'd say more pinkish, warm leaning neutrals. This isn't definitely a cooler neutral tone. You definitely have to like your warmer neutrals too once you get this. So yeah, with this one could be maybe some point that we could be tempted. I could maybe do a sort of trying out Lunar Beauty and seeing like doing this sort of maybe a brand video altogether and testing out some of them, because as I said, I have had one palette from this brand previously, and back then I was pretty impressed with that one, and it was also a neutral palette, so yeah. But that's the sort of second Lunar Beauty we had. Then the 7th palette of the video. So this was the Adept Cosmetics and Amy Love's collaboration palette, and this has been released this year. I actually said in a makeup news video that I was going to buy this, so for all those people that were thinking that where has been the review of this one, I didn't end up getting it. Why I didn't end up with this one, we had a bit of a budgeting thing, so during the month that I was supposed to buy this, because this is a brand that I can again get from Monolith shop, and Monolith has launches like once a month, and you pretty much have to be on the website. Well, these days not everything sells out immediately, so these days there's a bit more leeway, but a lot of the like very popular products, there's a chance that if you're not there on, for example, Sundays when they usually have their lunch times, it could be that the product sells out. And with this one, I think that I had to buy during that month. There was some like a product that I needed more that I had to actually use my budget for. So I just didn't have the budget for this one, because this cost around, I think it was 80 or 70 euros, and I was originally thinking that this and the blush sort of a quad that came with the sort of collection that would have been cool to get, but Monolith didn't also sell those in bundles, so actually buying those also the palette and the blush sort of palettes separately, that would have been like over 100 euros, and I was thinking I just didn't have the money during that month. This I think has been restocked in Monolith a few times, but I was actually pretty happy that I didn't end up getting this, because I actually, when I started looking at reviews of this one, I noticed that this is actually pretty grey leaning. I like my cool toned palettes because I am a person who has a cool undertone, however I have a cool rosy undertone, so for me the cool toned palettes have to be this sort of bit pink mauvish leaning, just purely like grey cool tone palettes. For example, I can take 1 or 2 greys, but with this one also a lot of the shimmers were pretty like silver grey leaning, so with this one it's actually I think a bit lucky that I just didn't end up getting this, because I did come into the conclusion when I started seeing people create looks with this one swatches that that's just it's not perhaps as exciting as I initially thought it would. I still will say that this collection had the best packaging I have ever like seen from Adept doing, because it had this sort of beautiful glittery pink. The blush palette had a glittery pink packaging. I think this had a glittery silver packaging, but beautiful everything. But I'm not actually that like mad about it anymore that I wasn't able to buy this in the particular month that I had planned to, that I had thought that I would get this. And this I think has been a palette that I have like sort of dropped from my wish list, because especially with indie brands, I have now, after collecting indie brands for some years, I know that if I don't get like, yeah, there's been like some palettes that have been like a bit like, well, it's like sad that I didn't get them, but I know that in like half a year time there most likely something else will come that I will be then able to get. So beautiful palettes still, but also like I'm pretty actually okay that I didn't end up getting this one. Then the last one, so this is from the indie brand that I have been talking for the longest time that I want to buy, but they still haven't come up with a palette that had made me push the buy button. So this is the Bella Beauté Bar, and this is the Secret Garden palette. And I think I discussed in one of my makeup news videos that this is like Oden's Eye and Angelica Nyqvist's original Hela palette with steroids. So if you have not seen the original collaboration palette with Oden's Eye and Angie, it was a pink-green palette, much more smaller size and definitely like not identical anyway in this one, but I told that for me this was like that palette but on steroids, because first of all, this is much bigger, and also the fact that this has like I think only special shades in terms of shimmers. So this I think was once again just something that I may have just said that it's too expensive, because this is one, especially these big Bella Beauté Bar palettes, this isn't the first big palette the brand has done. In Monolith shop these tend to cost between 70 and 80 euros, so that is always quite of a big amount from my monthly makeup budget to spend on a single item. There has been months certainly when I have thought that I really want the product and I have spent the money, but If there's also a lot of other products that I plan to buy, then something has to give out. And I think with this one I came into the conclusion that it is a very beautiful palette, and this would actually be maybe a perfect color story, because I kind of actually like this combination of neutrals and having a bit of greens and then having a bit of pinks and then these sort of special shimmers. But I think I might have come into the conclusion in the month that this will launch on Monolith Shop that it's just like not worth it compared to also the other products that I have on my makeup list that I then would have had to taken out, and because I would have had to put majority of my budget to this particular palette. Would this be a palette that I would still get, because this might be a palette that has been restocked and could be restocked in Monolith's website in the future. I think I would want a condensed version of this one. I do think the second big factor what has held me back is that this is truly like white. There's quite a lot of shades in this one. So if this could be maybe a 12 pan or a 16 pan palette, then it could be something that I'd be interested in. But at this size, and considering that I'm trying to avoid getting too many big palettes in my eyeshadow collection, because I do have a limited also space where to store my makeup, I just think that because of the size, I still think that even if I would then in some month have the money to actually put towards this, I would still like maybe want to, because I do know that the brand Bella Beauty Bar is a brand that they actually also do like smaller palettes. So I think I will just wait a little bit more, just like with the Gourmand Girls that I did, that I waited long enough, and I'm sure at some point there will be a smaller palette. They will come out with a palette in a smaller format that has the color story that I like, and I will just buy that one, because I just think that considering the size and the price of this, it's just, I think, even though I like the color story, I do still think that I'd rather wait something that fits maybe my makeup collection a bit better. But yeah, that was the last palette that I wanted to talk about in this video. So those were all the palettes that I had for this video. Comment down below what have been the palettes that you eyed for the longest time but still didn't end up buying them, and maybe tell us the reason why you didn't end up buying the palettes in the end. Or has there been a palette that you initially thought that yeah, I'm not gonna get that, but actually later on you still ended up getting the particular palette. If you like this video, push the like button, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell button if you want to get notifications for my future content. You can also find me with the same nickname, Makeup Hedgehog, on Instagram. I hope I'll be seeing you again soon in another video. Bye bye!